welcome back. Today we're going to be continuing as we read and flip through the book of modern painting. We'll pick up where we left off on our last video, which means that we're going to be starting with realism and reality. I'm actually coming from a museum. I was just at the MFA in Boston. I saw a lot of lovely images there. It put me in the mood to make another video. So here we have a painting by Gustave Courbet. I'm sure I will mispronounce this, but it's Demoiselles des Bois de la Sienne. We have this reclining figure here. And the ultimate relaxed pose. Looks quite at ease, I guess would be the best way to put it. And then we have the second figure back here. Hat and the glove with the beads. I don't really know much about the story of this painting. Clearly they're by the river in France. That's the Seine River. A rowboat back here. And I don't know if this is a detail of the painting or the whole painting. If I had to guess, I would think it's a detail, but maybe we'll see in the next pages. Here we have a painting by Jean-Francois Millet. I saw some Millet paintings at the Art Museum in Boston. Not this particular one, more landscape. But this is a very well-known picture. This is called The Angelus. The words over here say, a break from work in the fields for prayer inspired Millet to paint a picture of contemplative suspense. The image, which was to become famous and was often copied or parodied, clearly marks the point of contact between the realism of the mid-19th century and the subsequent mystical symbolism of the Nabis. It is interesting to compare it with the similar atmosphere and human setting evoked by Sagantini in his Ave Maria at the Crossing, which is on page 219. like the lighting that he uses in this painting. How it has a soft glow. It looks like dusk. I suppose it could be early morning. But I like this. These golden hues that he uses here, and the highlights on her skirt show the light, whereas this figure is in shadow. This is another very famous Malay painting, The Gleaners. And here's a little bit more of a landscape with the sheep. Malay is one of the most famous realist painters, along with Gustave Courbet. What was interesting about these paintings was that they depicted scenes of everyday life, like these women. The distant horizon and the peace and quiet of the fields bestow an aspect of solemn and romantic nobility on the poor gleaners, their backs bent in labor. Pictures like this played an important part in accustoming the public to themes of social realism. Gustave Courbet. Stonebreakers. Small seascape. The wave. lovely sky here. The peach colors and the pink colors in the clouds reflected in the peaches that are used in the rock. And then the blue of the ocean. On this page, we have more Gustave Courbet. And over here, Ford Madox Brown. Look at her face. It's lovely. Little wind-swept pieces of hair. And the wind is blowing the ties of her bonnet, or maybe it's a scarf under her hood. But look at those eyes. The straight nose. And look at his eyes, so intense. Intense stare. And look back here, this little face, hiding, peeking out from behind. So interesting. Confused. The hand here, assumed to be her hand. So this perhaps is a baby under the blanket, under the hood. Interesting. Something about this one speaks to me. I don't know why. The sparseness of the picture, the billowing of the curtain. It has such a beautiful sense of light. I love the curtain. It just seems so dreamy. Gauzy almost. The light cast against the floor. It's really lovely. Ilya Repin, Rest. And Giovanni Fattori, Livorno, I guess. This painting is called On the Lookout from 1872. It says here, Fattori was an excellent painter of battle scenes. However, his personal experience as a soldier involved an important phase of the Italian, I'm going to butcher this word, Risorgimento, led him to abandon any bombastic or bellicose attitude. His preferred subjects were soldiers on patrol or lookout in the dazzling sunlight or summer days in the countryside. Here we have a soldier. His horse. And the light wall makes a nice contrast for the dark of the soldier's uniform. Now we're moving to Impressionists. Impressionism is, of course, a very famous style of art. I'm sure we'll see some familiar paintings. This is a detail of Le Grenouillère by Pierre-Auguste Renoir from 1869. Renoir used small, quick brushstrokes to create the illusions of color and shadow without the clear detail that we saw in the realism chapter. It gives the impression of a scene without the literal depiction of every detail. Hence the name Impressionism. This is Edgar Degas. Over here, Monet, Manet, and Renoir. This painting is very familiar to me because, as I mentioned, I was at the Museum of Art in Boston today, and they have a Monet painting of the cathedral at Rouen, very similar to this. If you don't already know, what's interesting about many Impressionists, and Monet in particular, is that they were interested in capturing different moments of time. And so Monet would paint the same scene over and over in different times of day, so he could note the different shades of the buildings or colors of the sky. And in fact, the version of this painting, or this scene, that I saw in Boston today was more pink. It had tones of pink and blue because it was a different time of day. These are two beautiful paintings here, one by Edgar Degas, who's well known for his paintings and sculptures of ballerinas. His sculptor of the dancing girl was at the museum I went to today. And over here is Gustave Caillebotte, The Floor Scrapers. What I like about this painting is the way that the skin is treated, so that just a little bit of light is reflected to show the muscles of the subjects. It captures the little bit of light coming from this window or door back here. They look hard at work. Here we have Edouard Manet, not to be confused with Monet, but another popular artist at the time. This one is Luncheon on the Grass. I always found it odd that the men are fully clothed and the female figure is nude. Says, a celebrated and controversial masterpiece. This painting immediately divided the critics and public. It marks a crucial point in the history of art, a deliberate turning away from the schemes of classical painting to present a direct image of nature and everyday life. I don't know that I would consider it everyday life to have a naked woman at a picnic. Light. The way that the light plays off of the skirt. And loosely suggested ribbon. Again, the Impressionists don't paint every detail. They give the suggestion of what's shown with less brush strokes, faster brush strokes. And the choice of subjects was different than things like neoclassical art. You would have everyday people rather than royalty and those that could afford to commission a painting. Thick brush strokes here on the wall remind me of some of Van Gogh's early work. Again, the loose gestures to indicate the fabric. This is Edouard Manet, The Waitress. This says, a highly significant turning point in Manet's career came at the end of the 70s, 1870s, of course. The painter started to take a new look at the denizens of Paris bars and shows, revealing an intimate and long-suffering side full of humanity. It was a direction that would lead to his last masterpiece, A Bar at the Folie Bergère, which is on the next page. This is the painting they just referenced. They refer to it here as the painter's last masterpiece, and perhaps one of the most intensely poetic pictures of the whole 19th century. Well, that's quite high praise. The setting is that of one of the City of Light's most famous nightclubs. We can hear the buzz of the customers waiting for the next performance, smell the aromatic smoke of cigars, and hear the bubbling of champagne. Yet the whole image is dominated by the exhausted expression of the young bartender, a working-class girl who, amidst the gleaming bottles and glowing chandeliers, lives in the inner shadow as an unforgettable loneliness and melancholy. Also Edouard Manet, The Plum. Claude Monet. The MFA in Boston had an entire room of Monet. Not like these with the people in the landscape, but more just focus on landscapes and some water lilies and the Rouen Cathedral that I mentioned earlier. What an interesting detail. Look at his eyes. Both here and here are just smudges of color, just a slight indication. But your brain fills in the details of what you're looking at. I don't know why, I have always been very drawn to this painting. It's a Monet, and I don't know why I find it so intriguing, but my eye always goes to this umbrella here, and in particular this panel, which has the dark gray and one little patch of light next to a solid white panel. And I don't know why I love that so much. That stark contrast between the gray and the white, and how just a simple swath of color can create 3 dimensions so easily. It's really amazing. And over here, this is widely considered one of the first Impressionist paintings and is the namesake for the entire movement. The painting is called Impression Soleil Levant, which also means impression, sunrise. And the title, Impression, began to be used as a label for all of the artists that painted in this loose, gestural style. Over here it says, shown at the exhibition in Nadar's studio in 1874, this was the painting that gave Impressionism its name. Partly inspired by Japanese prints and partly the fruit of Monet's intense sensitivity, it is yet another watery scene, but at a very special time. The rising sun alters all the colors, steeping figures and objects in a blur of light, a magical effect that lasts only a few moments, but which Monet is able to capture and communicate. This is from 1872. So certainly not the first of the Impressionist paintings, but the one that gave it its name. This is a lovely painting. Woman with a parasol and her son. It's just so soft. Fabric blowing in the wind. The treatment of the light and the fabric and the soft clouds just makes you think of a summer day with a breeze blowing. It's lovely. Here are haystacks. And as I mentioned, Monet painted the same subject multiple times to capture different times of the day and the different light that was created at those times of the day. So at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, where I was this afternoon, they had haystack paintings that were very similar to this, but again, slightly different lighting. These paintings are in the Musée d'Orsay in Paris. White water lilies. Pierre-Auguste Renoir. I've always enjoyed this painting. The way that we're brought into the scene, but without being engaged by the subjects. They're looking off in the distance, but here and here we have contact with their eyes, and here it's a bustling scene, dancing and merriment. But I find there's something also quiet about it. The freeze frame of the action being caught in the moment makes it seem to me almost lonely, which is strange to have a painting of so many people but still have it feel lonely. But that's just the feeling I get when I look at this one. Here we have people that look like they're at the opera. The Theater Box is the name of that painting. You can see the gentleman holding his binoculars. I think there's a different name for them, but I can't remember. Something about the way she's staring at us while he's staring away. She looks sad to me. You've probably seen this painting before. This is a very famous Renoir painting, The Luncheon at the Boating Party at Pokeball. I don't know what it is about umbrellas. I just love umbrellas. Something about the symmetry of their shapes and the way that artists can capture the light on the panels. I just find it so interesting. I don't know why. Over here, look at the little girl, and she has a hoop and a stick, which was an old-fashioned game that they would play. The painting is called Umbrellas. It says this is one of Renoir's most successful paintings after the breakup of the Impressionists. With an extraordinary sense of chromatic harmony, the painter has based the whole of this picture on the bluish-gray tone of the open umbrellas and most of the clothing. But this dominant color is brightened by the faces of the young women, the crepe bonnet of the girl on the far right, and above all, the charming blonde child with a hoop, the true center of the artist's attention. Alfred Sisley. The MFA had a number of paintings by Sisley. Landscapes. This is called Road at Hampton Court. Apparently this is a detail of the painting. Or Sisley's. Look, his treatment of the water here and the sky here. In fact, this tree is quite lovely as well. Something about this one, to me, it just doesn't speak to me the way the others do. I don't know if it's the colors all being similar tones. It just doesn't stand out to me the same way that these two do. Really lovely. Now we're on to Mary Cassatt at the opera. She has the opera glasses as well. Interesting. I've never noticed before in this painting. The gentleman here looking at her through his opera glasses while she views the stage. She holds a fan. Here's Bertha Marisol. The cradle. Reading Two Sisters. And here is the mirror. It's lovely. I love the fabric around her neck. It's a very beautiful picture. Now we have Degas, Edgar Degas, most famous for his paintings of ballerinas and performers. This one is from 1858, an earlier painting, compared to this one, 1875. Almost 20 years later, you can see the progression in his style from more realistic to more of an impressionist style. Oh, I just love his theater pictures. This one with the dancers. Look at the skirts. Tool. And this one, the singer being caught with her mouth gaping like that. So oddly disquieting picture. I don't love it. Another mouth agape. Apparently he enjoyed catching people in the moments of life. Oh, more umbrellas. I love them. I love the treatment of the umbrellas. This is Gustave Caillebotte. We saw him earlier with the floor scrapers. I adore this painting. I saw this painting in real life. It is called Paris, A Rainy Day, and it's at the Art Institute of Chicago. It's very large, and when you come into the room, it's just breathtaking. It's absolutely stunning. The way that he captures the rain reflecting on the street, the way that your eye moves around the canvas because of the shape of this building. I love the light reflecting off the umbrellas. And again, because they're not looking at us, but looking off to the distance, we're able to observe without being seen. It gives it a voyeuristic kind of feeling to me, like we're spying on a scene of everyday people walking down the street, trying to stay dry. It's just lovely. I really enjoyed this painting. Camille Pissarro. This is interesting. The factory with the smoke. Here. That is a very different subject. I don't know that I've seen factory paintings in an impressionist style before. I like it quite a bit. Federico Sandomeneghi from Venice. You hear a lot about French Impressionists. But here's an Italian Impressionist. Although this particular painting is of a scene in Paris, so clearly he went there for at least a period of time. And that ends our chapter on Impressionism. We will save the symbolists for next time. I thank you for joining me.